Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. We're going to do a segment in the next half hour that I'm very proud and honored to do for reasons that you will soon understand. Many of you may remember the case of Brendan Tevlin. He's a young man in West Orange, New Jersey, who was shot and killed at a traffic light on his way home from playing with friends, playing video games with some friends. He was a university student at the University of Richmond. You see a picture of him right there with the bagpipes. He graduated Seton Hall Prep, which is a local Catholic high school I actually went to. He loved surfing, he was active with charities, was a Eucharistic minister. He grew up in a suburban town, Livingston, New Jersey, not known for crime and certainly violent crime. He was on his summer break when he was found dead a mile away from the high school he actually attended, that being Seton Hall. Brendan was with friends at his house, as I indicated, was playing video games, and he texted his mom, Allison Tevlin, and told her that he was on his way home, but he never made it home that night. Brendan stopped at a traffic light in the suburban town of West Orange with little crime as well and less violent crime, and was gunned down and killed and left dead in his car. The community was in shock. It made national headlines. Who would do this? Who would commit this kind of crime? Was it a robbery? Was it a carjacking? It made no sense to anyone that knew this wonderful boy whose favorite line he lived his life by, which was easy vibes and good living, as you can see in that picture of him right there surfing and as a piper. On August 4th, 2016, the Essex County Prosecutor's Office announced the arrest of one Ali Muhammad Brown, 29 years old, from Washington State. Brown was not a stranger to the criminal justice system. He had previously been convicted of a federal crime, get this, involving and being linked to terroristic activity. Stay tuned, because that's going to circle back to this particular case. In fact, at the time of Brendan's death at Brown's hands, Brown was on the FBI watch list for terrorists. Up until the time of the arrest, no one would have imagined that the senseless killing of Brendan could in fact be a random act of domestic terrorism, but it soon would be determined that it was. Brown was charged in conjunction with the killings of 3 other men out of Washington State. Authorities would release the dramatic facts of Brendan's death. He was shot 8 times, and Brown drove Brendan's car, with Brendan now in the passenger seat, to a parking lot in an apartment complex where he was left. Brown was living in a makeshift campsite where authorities recovered the murder weapon and a diary of Brown. The diary was filled with hatred, jihadist comments, and later Brown would say he was influenced by a steady diet of jihadist websites, videos, and propaganda aimed against the United States and United States citizen. Brown told detectives, quote, "All these lives are taken every single day by America, but by this government, so a life for a life," he told the detectives, according to the documents in the case file. The case made legal history in the state of New Jersey, because on July 2nd, 2015, Brown was indicted on charges including murder and terrorism, the first of such a case in the history of the state of New Jersey. During the court proceeding in January of 2016, Brown was sentenced or was 2016 or 2000 in the sentencing? Yes, 18, I apologize. Brown was sentenced to 36 years in prison for the armed robbery of the West Orange, a robbery that West Orange occurred in July of 2014, a few weeks after he's alleged to have killed Tevlin. The judge cited Brown's lengthy and worsening criminal record in imposing sentence. During that same proceeding, prosecutors read from Brown's diary, quote, "Follow the Islamic State," end quote, a reference to the terrorist organization that had been based in Iraq and Syria. And so goes the sad and horrific case of Brendan Tevlin. Now, it is a great honor of mine to bring in Brendan's mom, Allison McNulty Tevlin. Allison, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Allison, I guess not as a full disclaimer, but this case strikes close to my heart because despite all of the years as a prosecutor handling homicide cases and what I do on the show, it should be known that we've been friends for a very long time. Your brother was one of my best friends at Seton Hall Prep growing up. So we shared, and I get goosebumps right now, the hearing about this. And I know you haven't done anything but, I think, one media appearance. You've been very quiet about this. And so it's really a great honor and privilege that you would come in and be interviewed because people want to know this story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just tell us basically, give us a personal background about, let's talk about when we were kids. Like, where did you grow up? What was your life like? Tell us about Livingston, and tell us about meeting Mike, your husband.
Yeah, I grew up in Livingston. I went to St. Phil's went to Mount St. Dominic, had a really nice, one of 5 kids, just a great, very close-knit family, lots of cousins, aunts and uncles. Grew up just in a very safe, rural, suburban area, you know. Was friends with lots of my brother and I, who, Neil, who you were so close to, a year apart, so our friends were, you know, my friends were his friends, and it's just a great place to grow up. And I just feel like we all hung out locally, and it was a very safe area, and hung out very close to where Brendan was shot and killed often, just, you know, hanging with friends. And met Michael, probably met him a couple times in college, and then when after college, just he was friends with friends as well. It was like just a big group of people.
And I think that people would understand the Seton Hall community is a very tight community. And it's funny, when this happened, I just had these images of us at a field, Mayapple field, going back to my childhood, playing Frisbee and hanging out and all the things, being at your home many times. Mm-hmm. It just really struck really close to home. But tell us a little bit about, you got married to Mike and you had Brendan. What was it like? Tell us a little bit about Brendan and his background and who he was as a young boy.
Oh gosh, he was just a doll. He was just so easy to have. Just a happy kid that just very polite, very conscientious of everything. Just always did the right thing. He was just a good boy. He was a very easy pregnancy. We couldn't wait. And when we had, you know, they said it's a boy, it was just beyond thrilling, and he was just a great little guy. He was just an easy baby.
And I know that he had a 4.0 average at Seton Hall Prep, which is a pretty extraordinary thing. I don't want to say that. I don't think myself or your brother Neil ever had a 4.0 average, but he obviously was he was very bright. He did a lot of, as a kid, did a lot of volunteer stuff when he went to the prep. Tell us a little bit about, as he was maturing into a young man, what he was like.
Yeah, he just seemed to always, I honestly think he always saw something good in everyone, never held a grudge, never was really rude. He just was always, he did a lot of volunteering. He worked with kids with autism, and he helped tutor. He became a Eucharistic minister. He did Restore the Shore, down the shore after Hurricane Sandy. Got a group of Seton Hall boys and one of the teachers down there to help out with that. Just always giving back, you know.
Okay, and so you had to do the thing that many mothers have to do, is cut the ties a little bit. He went to the University of Richmond. Tell us a little bit about that. He went in there, and he was in his first year. How was that for you?
I was nervous about him being at Richmond. Just worried, typical mother things, I'm sure, worrying if that was the right place for him and if he was, you know, where he should be and doing what he wanted to do. But I can picture in my head forever, I'm sure, him coming home for his first time home, Thanksgiving, and going down to Penn Station in Newark and getting him and coming out, and he had this big smile on his face and just loved it.
Yeah, we see a picture right now, that $1 million smile. Where's that picture taken from?
That is his high school graduation. Okay,
so that's close in time to when he went off to college. And was he doing well there? Did he enjoy being in college?
He loved school. He was a good student. He was very, had everything planned, knew what he wanted to do, knew if he studied this would get him to this spot, you know, just like high school. If I work hard, then I can get into a decent school, and if I study this, and this, this is what I'm looking into, and very focused, very, he was like an old soul. People used to say he was an old soul as a very little boy.
Did he have an idea of what he wanted to do?
He talked often about, well, definitely something, he was a math guy, actuarial sciences, that type of thing. Yeah, and he something mathematic, finance, actuarial. That was his thing.
That's something that definitely was not my thing as well. I used to be in a class at the time, Allison, they used to call it dummy math at the prep, believe it or not. That's what they used to call it. Anyway, we're going to go to a break. We'll be right back with Allison. Welcome back. Allison Tevlin, the mom of Brendan Tevlin, is with us. Allison, thank you so much for giving us this interview. I know it's been very difficult and painful and that you've been shy of the media. We were at the point, though, where we were talking about your son went to the University of Richmond for his first year. He's done at summer break. Tell me, what was the last conversation that you recall having with him and the last text that you had with him?
Last conversation is it was a pouring, dark, rainy night, and he was like, debating whether to go out or not, and he decided he's just going to go and hang with some friends and watch the basketball game and play some games. And I was like, he said, I'll be home early. And got a text, I think it was around 11 o'clock, saying, all right, I'm coming home, going to be heading home soon. And I'll see you in a little bit. And then, never waited, thought maybe he stayed to the end of the game and wondering what he was doing. I knew he was 5-7 minutes away. I remember sitting with my daughter, thinking, I wonder where he is, and tried reaching him on his cell, and trying not to panic. I mean, who would ever suspect something like that in where we're from, that area? It's just not an area where something like that happens, or what everybody else says. It couldn't happen to us.
And it turns out from the court filings, Allison, as you well know better than anybody, that he was stopped at a red light, and in the bushes was this animal who jumped out and shot your son 8 times and killed him. Just a random kill for the reasons that we had stated before, because of his terroristic leanings. What was the first contact you had where you found out about this, and what was it like?
Oh, God. I can't even explain. My husband was not home. He was away with my middle son, Brian, at a lacrosse tournament. So he was in Maryland. So I was home with my daughter, Michaela, and my youngest, Sean. And she had kind of been sitting with me, because now we were getting worried, and it was pouring. And actually, at one point, we went and drove around, and we were headed towards West Orange. Got to a certain point, and something told me to turn around. And we were probably about a mile from where there would have been a massive police presence, but the doorbell rang, and there were several police officers there, and looked very nervous, and I was just, they just said, yeah. I said, not Brendan. And I said, yeah, Brendan. And they said he was murdered, and I was like I figured a car accident. And they said that, and I just honestly don't remember too much reaction, and I felt bad because Sean was, I think, 12 years old at the time, and had to call my husband in Maryland, didn't know what to say. He didn't tell Brian for the ride home. He just said something happened. He just didn't think they would make it home, I think. And it was just horrible. By the time Mike got there with Brian, there was just we live in a cul-de-sac, cars, people, news media, like just massive scene on the street. And, they knew. Brian knew right away something far worse than him being in an accident.
Was it hard for you to even comprehend when they were initially telling you it was a murder? Like, were you?
Oh, yeah. Murder, honestly, I was just like, I can remember, and, I knew some of the police officers, and one I knew pretty well, and I was like, what? No, that can't be right. Like, he was at a friend's house, driving home at 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't even late. He wasn't in a bad area. He wasn't doing anything he shouldn't have been doing. He was, it was impossible.
So now you got to go through this court system, and which victimizes victims a second time. And it was a long road. It was years until ultimately, just before a jury was being selected, he pled guilty to a sentence that's going to keep him in jail for the rest of his life, including the first conviction now for the domestic terrorism statute in New Jersey, which is a life without parole sentence. You were in court during the sentencing, and you had made a statement, and we have a little bit of a video clip of that statement. I'd like to show it to our viewers and come back on the other end.
The very definition of depravity, when you see a defenseless, unsuspecting, unknowing victim, incapable of getting away, being shot, trying to escape and then being executed.
The depth of the pain that one goes through when they lose a child. It's something that parents should ever have to endure. It's something you never get over. It's the first thing you think about when you wake up, and the last thing you think about before you go to sleep.
Now, I have been a judge for over 8 years, and this clearly is one of the most, if not the most, heinous, horrific, brutal crimes that I have ever presided over. And I hearken to say that in all my years prior to getting on the bench, I've never been involved in a case with this kind of brutality. Your callous, ruthless, barbaric behavior is truly more akin to the actions of a monster rather than a human being.
Allison, I know from that sentencing that while he said he made some stupid mistakes, he never apologized. He never said he was sorry. Did that bother you?
I don't know if it bothered me because I think he is, not right. I don't think he can understand his. No, I don't think he would have any remorse for anything he's done. The fact that he didn't apologize just, it struck me more that he was so offended that he was going to be imprisoned and would miss out, which he said, on raising his 2 daughters.
Go get that, man. That takes a lot of chutzpah to be saying that in court. But Allison, as I know from the family, and by the way, a funeral like I've never seen before in that church, the pipers and those drums. I remember I actually called my wife to listen to the church was thundering. It was shaking literally the pews, and there had been so much support in the community, the Irish community, the Shillelagh Club, the Seton Hall Prep community. But I want to also talk about the collateral consequences of this, the family. And there's a clip of your daughter, Michaela, and let's just take a real quick look at that because I think she made some pretty profound statements.
I was naive to believe that there is absolutely nothing that could cause enough pain and desolation to break a person's heart. That was prior to June 26, 2014, around 4:30 a.m. when 3 detectives stood at our front door to tell us that my older brother was murdered. It was in that moment I thought my chest was caving in on itself. It was nearly impossible to catch my breath. My entire body had gone numb, and the only thing I felt was the immense pain in my heart. It's the heartache I felt every night in the summer of 2014 when my mom would climb into bed with me and cry herself to sleep. Or when my dad would get home late at night, go to our family room, and silently sob because he thought no one would.
It was very compelling, and the back shot, I could see my friends Neil and Tom McNear there. It's just something else when it's your people that you've grown up with and love so much as it is for you. Now, in the end, Allison, I think it's really important. I got to know, how do you take care of your kids? And how, I noticed as a prosecutor, some people go into a dark hole and can never get out of it, and some people find a way to resurrect, and there's so many people that are in pain. Nobody can have a worse tragedy in my mind than what you went through. What's your message to them? How do you get through it?
Well, I think, like, my reason for moving on was my 3 other kids, for sure, and I think they are, they've done an amazing job. My daughter was my absolute rock after this, and she amazes me. But the 2 boys, you just have to stay positive and try to believe that love will triumph over evil, because if you don't, then they win. And it's been, the country seems to be having a lot of issues these days with, guns and crime and just crazy, unbelievable things. So I think, my kids, but I had a lot of support from my, as you said, the community, the Seton Hall community, the Livingston. People in Livingston were just amazing, and so many friends who would just come by and not allow me to sit on a couch under a blanket or lay in my bed, and people were very patient. I mean, it was a long process, and we have a very supportive family, but it's hard. Obviously, it's hard.
And despite the fact that it is hard and it's tragic, and you're on the up end of doing something at least to get past it for your love of your family, like you said, love triumphs hate and things of that nature. There was a lot of, I've been to a number of them, a lot of charities that were done and events that were run. Tell us about that community support in terms of all the things that were done and all the memorials and scholarships and things of that nature.
It was overwhelming, I have to say. Even the Columbia High School, where Michael went, the boys there, a group of guys who he'd been friends with since he was young, they ran a couple of concerts that raised a lot of money. There were people I didn't know. One woman sold baked cakes and sold them and donated all the money. I had little kids with lemonade stands, and people were just throwing money at the kids. Bracelets were made, wristbands were made. Everybody wanted to do something in their own way. It was amazing, the number of people who I didn't know who reached out or did know, or really all over the country. Some people who had said, oh, it reminded me of my grandson, so I made a donation, or like this big Irish family, and it was really so touching. The number of people I've met over the years who just felt that they had a connection. It was beautiful. It really is.
Allison, I am so honored that you would come on as friends for such a long time, and such a horrible thing. Your resiliency and resurrection in the face of evil is amazing and inspiring. And so, folks, listen, there's a 501c3 aptly entitled www.goodvibeseasyliving.org. Check it out, because they're doing great stuff with giving to charities. Allison, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. We'll be back.